Welcome to AAPC Social Hour for June 22nd, 2022. I am just checking our Facebook page to make sure that we are live. And it looks like we are. Catherine, how are you today?
I am doing fabulous. We finally have a day that is below 100 degrees here.
So it's scorching hot out in Texas.
It is. We are in triple digits and have been for several weeks.
Now, do you guys have the humidity out there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Southern Texas. Yeah. I mean, obviously, Texas is a very large state and the weather can range significantly from the bottom to the top. But I am located a little bit closer to the water. And so we do tend to have the humidity along with it.
Oh boy. So me and my wife, we just got back from a trip to DC, and that heat there, I think it's like the Texas heat where you feel like you're sweating all the time, even if it's 80, 85. It's just
so there you have a lot of cement and a lot of buildings, right?
Yeah.
And that I think intensifies the heat sometimes.
Yes. But have you been to DC, Catherine?
I have. My daughter's 5th grade field trip was to DC, and I went along with them as a chaperone, and they keep those kids busy. And you see everything you can possibly fit in a week.
Oh man, it's an amazing place to visit and sightsee, but it is exhausting, isn't it?
I am pretty sure you could visit there once a year and still see new things every single time.
I agree. Well, we have our wonderful members who are joining us. We have Christine Overstake. She says, I see you. I think she must be, maybe she saw when I popped off and
Yay!
popped back on or something. But our friend Renee Billinger from Kansas. Do you know Renee, Catherine?
Do I know what?
Do you know Renee Billinger? Have you?
I do know Renee. Yes.
Okay. Awesome.
I do.
And let's see here. We've got I hope I say this right. Shana's Afshan from New Jersey. Thanks for being with us today. Let's see here. Who else we have? Lori Futch from Texas. So your neck of the woods. Carlita from Las Vegas. Once again, I would imagine it's getting pretty hot out there as well. But everybody who's joining with us, thank you so much for taking time out of your afternoon or morning, wherever you may be. We've got Katherine Abel with us, our Director of Curriculum. And here's what I love about having you on, Katherine. You can speak to many things that affect our veteran coders and our student coders.
I am very fortunate to work with a huge network of SMEs that help keep me up to date on new things that are coming out. And when we find SMEs that are great with writing curriculum or updating curriculum, we stay in touch because you can never have too many friends in this industry.
I agree. And that's the beauty of this industry, is that making those friends is so easy because we all rely on each other so much.
Right. We are definitely a huge networking industry.
Catherine, what's your background? We didn't touch on this when we had you on. I call it must have been about a year ago, more or less. Were you a coder before working at AAPC?
I was. I actually started my career in healthcare as in medical billing. I worked for a facility. I also had moved to provider billing at one point, and then I switched the roles and went over to the insurance side for a little bit, and then I went into coding and compliance after that. I have worked with companies across the United States. I like to travel. One of my favorite jobs was traveling to implement electronic medical records or new billing systems and working with providers' offices and helping them think through the rules that they were setting up within the systems that was going to set them up for success with that billing or EMR system. That was probably one of my most favorite jobs. But so I've done compliance. I love auditing. Auditing is fun. I like to have my hands in multiple things. So just being a coder from day to day, I would have to be a multi-specialist to keep me entertained. I also have a little bit of squirrel syndrome. I see a record go by and I need to know more about that disease process or the procedure that I'm reading. And so it can get a little time consuming when I'm coding because I'm very, very curious.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that seems like a trait of our professionals. They love to investigate, really get into it.
It is, for sure.
Now, what led you into this field? Did you investigate it when you were in high school or college, or how did you end up here?
So I originally went to school for nursing.
Oh, okay.
I figured out very quickly that I was not so good at balancing patient care with the business or administrative side of it, that I had to pick one. I either needed to stay in complete patient care or I need to go total business. And candidly, I was better at business than I was patient care. People who don't want to take care of themselves was hard for me. I also experienced, I filled in on an OB ward for one day and it was more than I could handle. And so I figured out pretty quickly that the hands-on patient care was not the avenue for me and that I would be better off in business. An interesting story is when I was in billing, they would not allow our billers to make any coding decisions whatsoever. So if we got a denial and it was based on coding, we had to kick it to our coding team. And I don't like handing anything off. I don't like anybody else to have to clean up anything that I've done, right? And even if it's not something I've done, I'm a problem solver. So I wanted to solve the problem, and that's why I became a coder, because they wouldn't let me do it if I wasn't a certified coder. I was like, okay, we'll all become a coder. And that's where the story started.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's great. Everybody has such a unique path into the industry, and everybody converges with the CPC exam, it seems, and or many do, and then from there, like find how you find your first job and what that first job is, and those paths after that are so broad.
Absolutely. The hardest part is getting into the healthcare industry, right? And sometimes you have to take a job that is not necessarily the job you want just to get your foot in the door. Okay. But once you have your foot in the door, the possibilities of what you can do in healthcare are limitless. And it's all in where your strengths are and where your opportunities are, and taking advantage of every opportunity that comes your way.
Yes. So many possibilities. We have someone from Egypt who's joining us today, Sharuk. Good to see you. Good, thanks for being with us.
Fabulous.
And one thing, Katherine, that I've thought a lot about, especially over the years, as I've seen in our communities, our Facebook groups and other communities, just a misunderstanding of what it means to be an international coder. There are healthcare systems with their own unique needs, and we support those coders as well. And I hope to have some professionals from our international AAPC family on here sometime to talk about that and share what that looks like in Egypt or UAE or.
So we are starting to see quite a bit of growth on our international side, and we're seeing quite a bit of our curriculums being translated for international coding. In some cases, it's just simply trying to change it to their code sets. And in other instances, you have to write a whole new curriculum because the processes are completely different. So every single country that we move into is very unique. I'm learning more about international code sets every single day. There are, and even even the different versions of the code sets. So, of course, in 2015, we moved from ICD-9 to ICD-10. And then there's been different versions of ICD-10 since then. It comes out annually, right? We may have one country that is 2015 ICD-10 and another country that is in 2022 ICD-10 CM. There also are countries that will take a current year ICD-10 CM and apply a different year set of guidelines to that. So the complexities of moving into other international markets is a bit overwhelming at times, but it's fascinating to see countries that have typically not had tremendous control over their cost or their inpatient or DRGs or the healthcare cost. It is very rewarding to see these countries take on code sets and implement DRGs and be able to help their governments with the healthcare cost within their system.
I can't imagine the challenge that your department faces. And does that change the approach to the exams? I would imagine that those fundamentals probably are the same and would translate across the border.
So we have a very long-term proven success models with how we develop exams. And it's very important to keep the exams separate from the curriculum. Even though they're written around the same competencies, you obviously don't want to end up with exam questions within your curriculum. And it's very important to separate the two because they're actually done in two different ways. The exams, the first thing we do is we look at the job that the exam is being written to. What all is included in that for your country, right? Because they may have different duties than what we have for a coder in the United States may have completely different responsibilities than what a coder does in another country or in Brazil or Australia. And so we look at the competencies that they are required to do in their job duties for that. And then questions are written around those competencies after an entire committee looks at them and reviews them and said, yes, this is all encompassing. And anybody who is a coder may be expected to know any one of these competencies. And then they're weighted and we write questions based on those competencies and the weightings. And then all of our questions are always done by committee. They write them, they review them. We have 2 reviews on every question, and then there's a final internal review. So our exam questions go through a tremendous cycle to make sure that the exams are what they need to be for the credential they are being written for.
Interesting. Lady Martinez asks, how does AAPC select a country to teach and provide credentials? Do you have any insight to that?
So we actually have an entire international department, and as they talk to other countries, sometimes we have countries that reach out to us because they've done research and they know who AAPC is. A very good example of that is I think Brazil reached out to us because they already had an information society, but they wanted to have DRGs and have more education around the coding. So, and then we have other countries where we'll go and explore what they're doing and then talk to them about their cycle and see if there is any interest in credentials for their revenue cycle or for their coding or for the business side of medicine.
Awesome. That's so interesting. And I know we had a pretty interesting panel back at HealthCon virtual this past March. And I've heard very positive things about that. And it's great just to give that insight and share what's happening across the globe with AAPC.
Yes, I've had great fun working with Brazil and with working with our team in KSA. I've learned a lot about the societies and about the different cultures and what's expected of their employees, and even the regulations that the governments put on employers, not even just healthcare, that they put on employers. They're interesting to me. It's like that squirrel syndrome that I have, where I'm just like, oh, another piece of information to learn.
Oh, that's funny. Now we've got Juan Sancho. He's joined us from the UAE, and he helps. Juan is awesome.
Yes.
I talked with Juan.
Hi, Juan.
He trains many students in Egypt and UAE and that region, and he's doing a lot of good work there. Well, Katherine, last time we had you on, one of the popular topics that we spoke about were code books, and because one of the most frequent questions that we have in the Facebook group is, can I use old code books on my current year exams, 2021 code books on 22 exams and so on? And we're still saying you should use current year books.
You absolutely should use current year books. And I think the guidelines are a little bit different when you're going on what to use to do paper exams, where we allow the prior year. Because of limitations we have when we move online, the online exams, I believe, and I will have to double check that, but I believe we only allow current year books in the online exams. And that's just simply because we have a tremendous amount of remote proctors that we have to train, and it simplifies the process. And really, you should be using the current year books anyway. So it's very important to make sure that you understand the changes from year to year. So everyone should have current year books. And even in auditing, one of the big setbacks that we would find when we would go into offices and do auditing is that we would find that coders would have code books that were like 5 years old, and they would have procedures that they should be reporting that they had no idea existed because they didn't have current year books. We understand that current year books it's an expense, and it's one that companies try to avoid by not purchasing them every year, but it's extremely important to have current year code books.
Well, and a facility could be losing money by not coding properly.
Absolutely.
And as far as students go, I imagine how heartbreaking it is to miss being certified by one question. And if you're using old books, you would have that hanging over your head, wondering, could I have passed if I just had current year books? So
yes.
I mean, what is that worth to you? How in dollar amount that to have that peace of mind?
Right. So we have on our exams, we have a tremendous reliability. And what that means is if somebody is passing the exam, they are meant to pass the exam. They're doing really well, and they know their subject. And if they're not passing the exam, chances are if they take it again and not paying attention to what they may have missed the first time, to the core concepts, and utilizing their books in the way that they should be used, or even using a prior year code book, we're finding that that's not going to change. So if you're using an older book and you don't pass the first time, you might want to invest. It'd be worth it. Actually, it would be worth it to me to purchase it ahead of time so you don't have to sit for it again.
Yes. And if money is a factor, because I know finances are tight, especially these days, I would highly recommend reaching out to your local chapter, seeing if they've got books that they could loan you, and or a professional in your area. Reach out. That might be a great way to open the door to network that could lead to your first job as well. So
yes, absolutely. So we do know of local chapters who will have books that they can either rent out or lend to people. There may be doctors' offices in your area that you could potentially ask if you could borrow their up-to-date code books. The only thing that you're not going to have in that is any notes that you may have written in your books. But I will tell you that some of our top missed questions are not because your notes that you had written in there, it's because you didn't read the guidelines that were already there.
Yes. Don Newman, who's watching, talks about or mentions that money is a factor for her. But she also asks, what do you do with the old code books? And I've always wondered this, like, man, if we could figure out a way to to make use of our old code books?
So I actually had a member who put it out on Facebook. Have you seen where they make wreaths out of paper? I've seen it made out of old hymnals, where they make beautiful wreaths out of them. Somebody made that out of old code book pages, and the colors along the CPT edges made it just an absolutely beautiful wreath. So somebody did that. I have a tendency to hold on to mine because when you're auditing, you may have to go look back at prior years. And as we move into international markets, they may actually use our code books at a prior year or have to go back and look at prior year guidelines. So I hold on to all of mine. I have most of them end up going up in the attic if they're old enough, just so I have them at my fingertips if I can get to it. But yeah, I do hold on to mine. That is a benefit. Once you actually become a coder, that is a benefit of getting an encoder program, like maybe like Codify or an electronic program, or getting your books ebook. Once you purchase it, it's in your ebook library. That is a benefit, that it doesn't take that space and you don't have to figure out what to do with it. So as we get into technology, then it's easier to keep track of all of those.
Renee Billinger says it's Linda Wetter that makes those wreaths.
Yeah, I knew somebody did. I was going to send all of my books to her and I didn't get that done. So I'm sorry, Linda.
Kathy Parkhurst says, my daughter's going to make drink coasters from the pages for our member holiday party as gifts. I think that's a cool idea.
I would love to see how that turns out. I've never seen that, but I would love to see that. So if you post it to our page or shoot me a picture, feel free to share that with us. That would be great.
Yes. Don asks, can we donate them? I would say, I would speak to your local chapter about that. That's your best resource there, because we know how much books can cost to ship. So I would go local first.
Right.
Yes. And all right. Well, Katherine, we'll probably touch on exams and books and things a little bit more, but we're now moving towards 2023. And I would imagine your department has a focus on that and updating curriculum and information for that. What do you see going forward as we head towards the new year?
In means of codes, or what
yes,
our department
codes
is doing
and
moving forward?
Yes, codes, any major changes coming up this year, anything that our coders should be aware of?
Absolutely. So our ICD-10 CM codes recently got released for 2023. For updating our products, we actually start that in April each year, pushing forward, because once the codes are released, we have a finite period of time to get all of our curriculum to go through all of our processes. So we start in April of each year, but as soon as our codes start getting released is when we really get down to the core of updating our products. The ICD-10-CM was released, and interestingly enough, at the same time they released the codes, they released the guidelines, and that very rarely happens. Usually I'm implementing guideline updates at the very last minute. In fact, one of our products used to actually it was the week of print that I would be updating the guidelines as it got sent out. But this year, the guidelines were released with the codes. The big guideline, there are some minor guideline tweaks in there, a couple of guideline adds, but the big one that's in there this year is we actually have a guideline added on dementia, and a lot of codes or extension of codes on dementia. That's when I just kind of scrolled through them all, that was the one that stuck out to me. That's probably going to affect our curriculum more than anything else. PCS codes have also been released. I am not as familiar with PCS, so I don't know what those updates are off the top of our head, but they have been released for 2023. And
how do you and your team use this information, and or what curriculum are you updating? Is it for obviously CPC and the other exams and certifications? Are there other places that we make those updates for?
Every single course and curriculum that AAPC has goes through this update process. So the codes not only affect our core curriculums like CPC, CPB, CRC, CIC, CDEI, I mean, the whole realm of them, right, our specialty curriculums, but it also affects our, what we call a certificate course. And that's just a course that once you complete the course, you're going to get a certificate of completion. It doesn't really lead to a certification. It's just for edification on that particular topic. So, and we have our resource guides that also go through that. Our editorial team is really at work trying to get all of our code books created and the guidelines updated within those code books, and making sure that those get to print so that we can sell those in a timely manner. All of our codify information has to be updated with the updates. Pretty much everything we touch has to be updated with these within that finite period of time. So when you're talking about CPT releases, we don't usually get those until maybe late July. And so we have essentially from August until our courses go live on November 1 to get every single piece of those products updated, gone through editorial, gone to our publications department, gone to print, and received back in time to sell those courses on November 1st. So it is, and then we go into our study guides and we go into our exams. Every bit of that has to be updated once we get those codes in, which is why we rely on such a wonderful network of SMEs to help us.
And those SMEs, they are not all full-time AAPC employees.
Most of them are not AAPC full-time employees, actually. We have a very small team at AAPC that runs the show. And the reason for that is because with all the different topics, we have to make sure that the subject matter expert is an expert in that subject. We do have subject matter experts that have a wide variety of knowledge, but because of the different specialties that we're in, we have to make sure that our subject matter experts are up to date and current in that particular subject. So any subject matter expert that wants to work with us, they are required to have the credential for the product that they are working on, and they are required to have passed we have a small test that we require our subject matter experts to take to make sure that they have a writing ability, to make sure that they understand what they're talking about, to make sure that they're using up-to-date code books. So once they go through that, then we can allow them to work and help us update. All of our updates go through a 2SME review for updates, and then they get an internal final review as well. So you can imagine with all of those processes and all of those pieces, I mean, you're talking about when we have a core course, for example, our CPC, we have over 1,000 questions in our CPC that all have to go through review. We have our practical applications. You have over 200 practical applications in our CPC book that have to go through review. You have your quizzes that have to go through review. You have your textbook that has to go through review. Plus we have 200, almost 300 lectures in that course that all have to go through this review. And then once we get those updates done, like I said, they have to go to editorial, but then they have to go to production. And once we approve print, they have to go to our ebooks, and they have to go to print, and our lectures have to go to production. And so there's all these flying pieces that we have to keep track of to make sure that everything gets done. Once it gets done, we have to make sure that then gets translated into our courses online. So it is definitely a fast-paced moving update season once we get those codes in.
Now, I think about the books, and they're one of our few printed products, but so you have hundreds, sometimes thousands of changes that need to make it into these huge code books. And I know when you're working fast, that's always a concern, like, because that's where errors can happen. But you guys are focused on double checking and getting as many eyes on these updates as you can, so that when they're printed, it's as correct as possible.
Yes. And we do everything in our power to try to make sure that things go out 100% correct. We are always thankful when somebody brings something to our attention, and we try to get it corrected as soon as possible, get an errata out. But you can imagine with all of these different pieces and the short period of time we have to get stuff out, there may be one or two items that slip through our fingers, but we really work hard to get everything right the first time.
Yes. Well, you mentioned all of these different certifications that we have that you have to go through to update. One question that I've always wondered is how do we, because I know I believe we released a new credential last year. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head.
CDEI.
But there you go. How is that determined? I think it'd
That
be
actually is
interesting.
still in beta, but I think.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know we had beta, we're finding beta examinees and things like that I think it was last fall.
I think CPMS, we have CPMS that
Scribe.
we're running another beta through as well.
Okay.
The Scribe.
I think for the viewers here, I think they might find it interesting to see, because I do get those questions that come to me. Hey, I'd be interested in this certification. It'd help us so much. What goes into AAPC determining if we will launch a new certification?
So the process right now is that if somebody tells us that we should have a credential in a particular topic, we will create what's called a certificate course. I talked about those a little bit earlier. Okay. Once a certificate course is created, we'll monitor that to see what type of response we have from our members and how many people are interested in that, to determine whether it is worth the investment that is given annually to credentials. Keep in mind, once we put a credential out there, to sunset that credential is difficult. So we want to make sure that it's one that is going to serve enough people to make it, to put in the time that it takes to
support it,
upkeep that credential, right?
Because you're going through that process every year.
Right. And you're talking about CEUs. All of that has to be updated. You're talking about a course to get them ready. You're talking about practice exams, study guides, exams, and all of that takes a tremendous amount of time to get it right. So we like to kind of toss it out there as a certificate course, for lack of a better way to say that. And kind of see the response that we get to see if it needs to move to that next level. So
if a member feels like there would be a place for an additional certification, what would that process be, Katherine? They would just need to let us know and what their thought process is behind it, and any information they want to provide that would help us make that decision. And then we will, of course, look into it and look at the data and see if that's something that we want to move forward with. Okay, great. We do have a few questions. Deborah Clapp asks one of the most popular questions lately. I think you might know what this is. Is there any plan to offer online tests other than CPC? I'm having trouble finding exam testing in my area, and we spoke about this last time. And I know, I've heard, Katherine, that we are getting much closer. We are getting much closer. This is something that we have been working on for 3 or 4 years, trying to move or provide a way for members to take our exams online. But there are so many facets that go into that. We have to make sure that our exams are secure. One of the things about exams is that if we find that questions on our exams have been compromised, those questions are completely removed and replaced. And that's not an easy task given the requirements that we have for our exam questions. And so as we move to an electronic age and think about putting our exams online, we have to look at the security. So you're talking about systems requirements. You're talking about having proctors at a particular ratio. You are talking about having all these different systems that are required to work together. And you're talking about the internet capability of every home in whatever country we're working with, right? So looking at the options that provide most options for most members is what we have to focus on. But and then you have to look at what is allowed in the exam system
not only the security, you're talking about content. How does that get built? What does cases look like? Can we put all of the questions with one case? What does fill in the blank look like? You know, our CIC exam has fill in the blank questions. They actually have to code the cases. So what does that look like? How does that get graded? Our CPMS, our scribe credential, you actually are physically typing out a medical record. What do we do with that? How does that get graded in the electronic system? So there are so many different facets and so many departments that have to work together to make this work. And that's why it's taking this long to actually get it up. We are moving in that direction. We're doing our best to get it there, but we will not compromise the integrity of the exams, and we will not compromise the content and the exam experience for the members. So we have learned we are stretching some vendor capabilities to make happen what we require.
It's really, for those watching, this is about protecting your certification, your credential, and making sure that like you said, integrity of that is maintained. So as excited as we are to get that out, and because we know that it will benefit so many of our members and future members, but we don't want to sacrifice the
and
integrity.
every step of the way, we do psychometrics to make sure we do psychometric analysis to make sure that our exams remain reliable for our members.
And just going back to your comment about when we find an exam question that has leaked, I've seen that process.
It breaks my heart.
Yes.
Every time.
I know you and Ray, like, action is taken immediately. It happens quick, and you have to get a new exam questions in quickly, and there's no fooling around with that.
No, and we rely on subject matter experts, and I have a fabulous team that works with me that helps us to accomplish this. But really and truly, it's an unexpected thing that happens that requires us to drop everything we're touching and get on that, because that is high priority. So it is definitely heartbreaking to have to do that, and sad that happens sometimes, but we definitely take immediate action.
Fortunately, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's a very rare.
It is a rare occurrence. Because we keep such tight security on everything. We don't even, just so everyone's aware, there are even people within AAPC that do not have access to this content. It's a very secluded content, and we want to make sure that it remains secure and keep the integrity of it.
Awesome. That's so good to hear. Shifting gears a little bit, Letitia Jolly asked a question a few minutes back, just asking, what are AAPC's requirements to create and start an AAPC chapter in a new country? I don't think they differ much than domestically. You know, there needs to be a need, and there needs to be, we need to know that there are enough members in that area to be able to support that. And I know even in the US, we are much more careful these days about starting chapters. We really vet that out before doing that. I know I've spoken to members who are eager to start chapters in their area, but we just haven't seen the member support in those areas yet. Katherine, do you have any other information on that?
So when you're talking about doing chapters in other countries, it also depends on whether or not we have a credential for that country, or if they're using US-based codes, right? Or so they would use US-based credentials, or if they have the same code sets. I would imagine that local chapters is not my expertise, but I would imagine, yes, that they would follow along those same guidelines. There would have to be a need for it. You want to make sure that there's not so many local chapters in an area that it hurts the other chapters, right? It's about us all working together within the same area. So I would imagine it would have to fall along those lines.
Sean Tatum Williams asks, I'd like to be a subject matter expert for AAPC. What's that process, Katherine? If someone feels like they have a unique expertise and would like to use that to support AAPC, how would they do that?
I think we have an ongoing employment ad for subject matter experts. If you check our job listings, I think they can access that on our website. And you can apply through there. You can also reach out to Craig Larson. So that's Larson, Laursen, craig.larson@aapc.com, and let him know what your credentials are and your experience. You probably should send a resume, and then he will look at it and see if it fits with any of our current requirements for subject matter experts. We do have a tendency to start with our certified instructors because they teach our curriculum. They know what kind of questions the students ask. They know where problematic areas may be. So we tend to start with them when we're looking at subject matter experts, but you can definitely reach out to Craig to get on that list.
Our friend Kim Williams mentioned she enjoys being a SME for AAPC. And Kim, since you're watching, maybe you can guide Sean along and help her get to that link on the website if you have that. All right. Well, let's see what else. Katherine and I made a little list of things that we could go over. One of those things is the new exam updates that were released at the beginning of the year. I know it affected a few exams, fewer questions, the cases being bunched together at the end. Any reports back on that, Katherine?
Actually, we are seeing tremendous results on that. As I said, every time we make a change to our exams, we require psychometric results to make sure that the questions are acting in a manner that we expect them to. And the move to go from to reduce the items on the exam and reduce the time on the exam is giving us very close to the results that we expected. And we are hearing really good feedback from the proctors and the examinees about that reduction, but our psychometric results are coming in exactly as we expected. So it's turned out to be really, really good. I would love to hear the feedback from the audience on anybody who's taken the reduced exams on their feedback. We did do some surveying of people we knew that took both sets of exam to get their feedback, and that was all positive feedback as well.
Awesome. Now, Katherine, for clarification, the cases, from what I understand, were always in there. Mm-hmm. Now they're just together.
We're talking about CPC now, right?
CPC, yes.
So for CPC, the cases were always there. They were in with the different areas of study. So if you were going into the 3000 series, we may have had a case and asked you a multiple choice question about that. So what we did is we moved those to the end to a case section, and they still have the multiple choice questions. So they're kind of formatted more like a case. So we would have put a header on it of an operative note instead of just having the operative note there. So you know what you're looking at. And then the questions would be at the end. So it really was just a movement of material versus changing it.
That really threw the students off. They felt like, I think a lot of people thought they are adding cases now, but the cases were always there.
They were always there. You just didn't, it really is more of a psychological that you know that you're looking at a case versus reading through a question and it being a case and you not realizing that till you get the end to ask the question.
All right. Miriam Fernandez says, I just registered for the CPMA online training and she's freaking out. She asked for any tips on how to schedule her study time. Miriam, I would just recommend going to the AAPC Facebook group and asking those questions there. There's so many people who have taken that course and have that credential, and they can help you out. Do you have any thoughts, Katherine?
I would like to point out on all of our cores that have practical applications within the course. At CPMA, you have to know so much stuff before you can do the practical applications, so they're at the end of the course. So many students will attempt not to do the practical applications because when you look at an operative note for the first time, it can be a little bit overwhelming. CPMA, there's a lot of documents you have to deal with, the audit form and all of the books and the medical record and the fee ticket from the provider. So sometimes they'll think it just takes too much time, and they may try to skirt that, but that is the most important item in those classes, to help you know that you know what you're going to do when you get in that position. That's why they're there. So my biggest recommendation is make sure you understand what you miss on those practical applications. And if you don't understand it, then check with your instructor.
Awesome. Elaine Gonzalez asks, does the local chapter, or do local chapters conduct an online or an exam review, either online or in person? And Len, that just depends on your local chapter. Some do, some don't. I would recommend that you reach out to not only your closest local chapter, but maybe the ones within the region, and they might have something online if it's too far. So just reach out.
We also have an online exam review for CPC.
Do we? And I have to just throw out practice exams. You do yourself a great service by purchasing our practice exams. They are, I think, pretty inexpensive and worth the time to get a feel of what that experience will be like.
So just to throw out there, Alex, the way the practice exams are developed is when we do our exam committees, they actually create extra questions, and they don't know which ones are going on at the exam and which ones are going on practice exams, but that's where we pull those practice exam questions from, so that they are written in the same frame of mind as our exam questions, and they are more similar to our exam questions. I mentioned before that the curriculum is separate from doing exams, and intentionally that is a good practice to have. But when it comes to the practice exams, it's written from the same group that does the exams. So that really is a good resource to do when you're preparing for an exam.
And if you're watching and you just have any question about AAPC education or curriculum, exams, this is a great time to ask that. We have a few minutes left. Anything for Katherine, feel free to shoot away. Katherine, has there been anything that has caught your attention just generally in the industry that has either this maybe a cause for that made you stop and think, oh wow, our members really need to know this, either in a concerning way or just as an informational way?
So the big one coming up this year is our E&M updates, right? We're expecting a plethora of E&M updates. We did the 2021 updates to the office visits, office or other outpatient 99202 through 99215. And we're expecting that to be expanded with modifications to the other areas in evaluation and management. We, in fact, are still waiting to see those. Because we are going to need to update all of our curriculum for that. But this year, the big story is the evaluation and management. And I don't know about the ones that those of you that are out in the industry and coding evaluation and management, but I personally, I prefer the new guidelines. I love the new guidelines compared to the data checkbox that we currently had with 95 and 97 guidelines, but I really like the 2021. So I'm excited to see those move to additional subject areas within A&M. Now,
did it have a big update last year as well?
Last year we had kind of a cooling period. 2021 was the big year where we changed everything over to the office visits. And then we did some fine tuning when the guidelines were kind of clarified last year. And then this year, they're expecting to expand that. They did put it out there. If you look at the AMA CPT panel notes, they have put out there some of the subjects that will be updated, but we don't know specifically what those updates are.
All right, our call for questions has come through. So we're going to spend the rest of our time fielding a few questions. Shoot. We'll start with Lori Steve Madison, who asks, are there plans to add a pathology specialty?
We do not currently have any plans for a pathology specialty because it's covered within the CPC.
Okay.
If that's something that you feel there are enough pathologists enough of a pathology audience to create that. We can certainly look at a certificate exam. So you can shoot me an email and tell me kind of what you think that looks like and what kind of data is driven behind that. And we can certainly add that to our potential list.
These are not questions here. These are just great comments that I'd just like to read real quick. Lori Etheridge says, I'm in an AAPC coding class now. I'll be taking the CPC in September or October timeframe. So this is helpful. Thank you. So thank you, Catherine.
Love it. Love it.
Penny Walker says, I have 3 certifications. Those practice exams are worth every weight in gold. Highly encourage anyone to use them.
Yes, they are.
So the first name on this question, I am not even going to try, but the last name's Moore, so you know this is you. And they ask, how is the passing percentage calculated for the CPB? Would you know that, Catherine?
How is the calculating percentage? Are you talking? So the cut rate is 70% like it is for all of our exams. Is that what you're asking?
That's what it looks like. How is the passing percentage calculated for the CPB? So if there are 100 questions, I don't know if this is 100.
There's 135 questions on the CPB, and it's still done on a percentage basis.
So you just need 70%. It doesn't matter if it comes all, if you miss more or less from different sections.
Nope.
Just 70%.
70%.
All right. Let's see here. We have lady who asks, do you know if consult codes are finally going to be deleted?
So the interesting thing about, no, I don't know that to answer that directly.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. Miriam asks, I've been auditing medical records for a couple of years now. Should I take one of the 3 practice exams just to see what my weak areas are before starting the CPMA online training?
I think there was probably a package out there where you could get the training and the 3 practice tests, but yeah. The course is going to teach you all of the concepts you need to know in an organized order so that you understand one from the next. What we have found on CPMA is while we require, it's designed to teach somebody that has 5 years of experience in medical coding. But what we found is some of them would have that experience in surgical and not know anything about E&M, or they may have that experience in E&M and not know anything about surgical. So we did enhance that a little bit. But really it's done in an organized manner that will prepare you. And then I would save the practice exams for the end for when you're really getting ready to take the exam.
From our friend with the last name Moore, going back to the 70% exams, yes, 70% overall. And that is the limit there. Someone's asking about where can I find practice exams for specialty coding, and do we have those, Catherine?
Each one of those specialty exams has a practice exam that goes with it, and if you go to the certification website or preparing for certification, there's an option for specialties. I would look in there for them.
Okay. And what I do is often is just do in Google AAPC, put in the certification that you're looking for. That will take you to the page for that, and you can hunt around from there. Yes. All right, let's see here. I attended the CPT editorial panel and RUC meetings. Is there someone I would contact to see if I could apply for CEUs based on this? I know the symposium is awarded CEUs. Would you happen to know anything about that, Catherine? I
would submit that for a request for CEUs. I think there's an email on the CEU page that they can email.
Yep, just reach out to our CEU department and they'll be able to review that and tell you for sure. Raul asks, when will we start seeing online exams in India?
Again, there is a long process that our exams have to go through for us to release them online to make sure that they are secure and we keep that integrity. So we are working on it across the globe, and we hope to see that soon. I can't give you a particular date because every time we do something catastrophic comes up and we have to totally redirect. So all I can tell you is that we're working on it, and you may eventually get there.
And Lori Madison asked that same thing. And Lori, we addressed this earlier in the broadcast. You can go back and listen to that earlier. It's probably about 10-15 minutes ago. We will not do anything that could affect the integrity of the credential. So we want to make sure we get this right, but we are getting closer.
We are getting closer. I do think that you will see it sooner rather than later.
Yes.
Probably not soon enough for some of you, but we're doing our best to get it out there.
Yes. Teresa Bennett asked, is there any talk about a neurosurgery certification?
So that is actually an interesting topic, because it's come up in a couple of meetings that I've been in lately, that particular topic. We do have a certificate course out there for neurology and neurosurgery. We also have it's included in a couple of our different resource guides. We are not currently talking about a neurosurgery credential. It has not, the weight of what we're seeing does not support the time and effort that goes into maintaining credentials. That doesn't mean that it won't change. I do know those numbers are ones that we're currently looking at, but we are not talking about a credential at this time.
Michael Usimo asked, just joining, what did I miss? Michael, the beautiful thing
Oh my
is,
goodness.
yes, you can watch this. We're gonna go through this whole thing. No, we're not gonna repeat all the questions, but Michael, I'm just teasing. Michael, you can watch this on demand on our Facebook page. So just go to the AAPC Facebook page and you'll find this in the feed, and you can watch this, or I will have this on the AAPC podcast. So if you're a podcaster, just type or search for the AAPC podcast, and we'll have this up in a few days and you can listen to the whole thing. All right, let's see. Lady asks, Katherine, can I network with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. What LinkedIn? Is that all right if she reached out to you on LinkedIn?
I'm out on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I think those are I'm on Instagram. I always forget I'm on Instagram, but I'm on there.
Okay. All right. There you go. Rachel Williford is asking, can you repeat who to contact about being a SME? That's Craig Larson.
Mm-hmm. Craig Larson. You can shoot me an email. I probably am not going to respond to it. I'll just forward it to Craig. So you can, my name's, I think, up there, Katherine.Abel, ABEL. It's Cain and Abel, not Abel and Willing. And you can do Katherine.Abel@aapc.com. Shoot me an email. I'll forward it to Craig, and he'll put you through the process.
Yes, Craig sometimes joins us on these broadcasts, but sometimes as well, not as a participant, but in the comments he'll pop in here, so he might even be watching right now. I'll let him know that this came up. All right, let's see here. Lori Madison asks, as a chapter, it's hard to know what topics qualify for specialty CEUs. Is there a list where I could find good topic ideas?
So really, it is any topic that is going to affect that credential. So if you are looking at a cardiology credential and you're talking about, I don't know, musculoskeletal, it's probably not going to go for cardiology. So, but it really is supposed to be anything that you would consider for that credential. And we don't have a list of topics out there because we want you to be innovative and come up with topics, and then we'll approve them based on them coming in. One of the things that you might do is you can go to our webinar subscription or our webinar page, and you can search by credential, and you can see the type of topics that are approved for that particular credential, and that might be helpful for you.
I'd recommend also, if you're not a member of the local chapter officer Facebook group, that would be a great place just to throw ideas out and have that conversation with other chapter officers, see what's working for them, and get some ideas there. Okay, we've got 3 minutes left, and it looks like many comments. I just want to make sure we cover everybody. Okay, this will be our last question, Katherine. How is the break? This is regarding exam questions and the breakdown of the grading. How is the breakdown? Is the breakdown express the number of right answers in CPC exam by percentage, please? Well, Hannah, it's simply, if there are 100 questions in the CPC exam, which there are, you have to get 70 of those questions right. So it's that simple.
That was an easy one.
Yes, that's right. Katherine, oh man, we could spend more time
Hours.
with all of these, yes, with all of these wonderful people. And this just tells me that we need to have you on more often. But I know you're very busy.
Season.
Yes, okay, got it. But thank you so much for being with us. Thanks everybody
Absolutely.
for the wonderful comments and the great questions. This was just an amazing AAPC social hour today. Katherine kind of jumped in at the last minute. And so I thank you for clearing time out of your schedule today. Katherine, just hang on with me just for a minute as I wrap this up. So everyone, just as I mentioned before, you can watch this on demand on the AAPC Facebook page. I'll also load it up to YouTube in a few days. And if you're a podcaster, you can listen to this on the AAPC podcast. Just search in your podcast app for the AAPC podcast, and you can listen to our AAPC social hour presentations or our I Am AAPC interviews. So a great way to listen and be inspired and find out what's happening in the industry as you're doing chores, or making dinner, whatever you may be doing, maybe driving into work. We thank you again for being with us, and we won't see you again, everybody, until after, well, no, I think we'll see you because we got 4th of July coming up, but that's on a Monday, so we will see you in 2 weeks. Thanks everybody for being with us, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.